15 years has already passed since I finished my studies at NYU, but I am an alum. I was here for my master's in sports business work from 2004 to 2006, and it was actually a pivotal moment in my career development. So thank you to NYU for certainly helping me find my path. Before I jump into my career and my journey, I got to do a quick temperature check. I promise not too much crowd participation, but by show of hands, who is actually a fan of the New York Liberty or knows or is familiar with the Liberty? Show of hands, keep your hands up. Have you been to a game? All right. I'm working with a good crowd. No judgment at all with that question by any means. As it was mentioned in my bio, I do have the great honor and privilege of being the CEO of the New York Liberty. It's an original team in the Wnba. We're one of 3 original teams that are left in the Wnba. It's 12 total teams in the market. I'm just spitting a lot of Wikipedia information for all of you who didn't look it up before this evening, just to acclimate and help you understand, what it is that I do, but also how my journey sort of plays into what this career has ultimately become. And the last thing I'll say in my preamble here is I'm quite at home in a room full of women. I work in a women's professional sports team. I'm in the business of uplifting powerful women, showing their excellence each and every day. So I feel right at home with the future titans of the real estate industry. So again, thank you for having me here. My story. I used to start, honestly, with undergraduate, where I attended Canisius College, but I think it's really important for me to go back to the beginning. I'm actually an only child, which is why team sports became a huge love of mine. The minute I picked up a ball, it was kind of like instant sisterhood, instant I could hang with the guys, instantaneous friends for, each and every season, here in and here out. And I started playing basketball when I was about 8 years old. Case in point, both of my parents actually played ball collegiately for a short stint. Neither of them graduated or played 4 years, but they had instilled in me just a love of the game, and it was purely a love. So much so that my mother asked me if I wanted to go to basketball camp when I was 10. I said, nah, I just play basketball for fun. Like I'm really, really focused, on just my schoolwork, and this is just a hobby. Fast forward to my middle school and high school years, and I started to get really good. School started to recruit me. UConn never called. I grew up in Connecticut, so that would have been a lifelong dream. But as it stood, I was offered a full scholarship to play at Canisius College, a really small Division I school in Buffalo, New York. And it was really there that I started to really learn a lot of the tools and the skills that I've taken with me throughout my career, one of which being I wasn't very good. My old boss used to joke my GPA was higher than my points averaged. I had great teammates and I played a lot, I started, but I just wasn't the star player. And I had to live with that for all of those seasons and really learn how to be a team player, how to be a role player, how to contribute in other ways, but mostly how to keep in focus my academics. So that's really what was the tide that brought me through those undergraduate years, but it was really when I started to look at the business side of sports and really get interested in, why were less people coming to the girls' games than the guys' games? Why were we jumping out of our, out of the shower to get to their games or, go across town to see the other colleges in town? And it really was this inequality, this disparity between men's and women's sports that I started to get a glimpse of, but I wasn't really a hellraiser. I wasn't involved in a lot of clubs. It was just sort of in the back of my head, something that I was thinking about. Fast forward, I graduated and I was introduced to someone at the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I had grown up going to the Basketball Hall of Fame as a kid. My mom would bring me every summer. I'd learn about the history of the game. And then all of a sudden, here I was in an entry-level position at the Basketball Hall of Fame. I was an account executive. I sold tickets to the museum. And although it wasn't sports, it was a sports museum. And I took that as maybe this is the path I'm supposed to go on. To me, it was just the first job out of college. Little did I know it was going to lead to an entire career in sports. And it was really during that time that I really started to keenly look at what sports business really meant. I had done some research on team marketing and business operations, which is a department at the NBA that really services all the teams and helps teams to really drive their business revenue, understand human resource management, anything that's going to improve the business. And when I learned about that department, I actually began to look at going to graduate school. My best friend was actually in New York. She was studying in the midwifery program at NYU, and she's like, yeah, they've got a sports program. You should come check it out. And I had really not a ton of intention on going to school right away. I wanted to work for a couple years, but I was only 11 months out of undergrad when I just made the decision to move to New York. I told my whole family I'd be here for 2 years. It's crazy to believe it's been 16 years already, but it was really during this time at NYU where I started to understand the landscape of professional sports. We all know all the teams here in the city, but it was the WNBA that caught my attention so much so, and I love to tell this story. I wrote my advanced special project on the WNBA, having never been to a game before. So if you reach back, I told you I started playing basketball when I was 8 years old. I played in college. My parents were collegiate basketball players. Yet and still, I had never thought, it never dawned on me to buy a ticket to a game. I'm from Connecticut where there was a team. I had now moved to New York where there was a team. And it was almost, I felt a little bit shameful about it at first, which is why I say to all of you, there's no judgment. It's a fairly new league. It still has fairly low awareness, but that's what really challenges me and keeps me going, because we have this game and we have this property to introduce people to yet and still. So it was after completing that advanced special project, believe it or not, my old coach, who I surveyed during that project, said, I know someone at the NBA league office. Do you want to meet her? I said, yeah, that'd be great. About halfway through presenting my paper, the woman said to me, this is great. You just ripped us apart in this 30-page paper, but do you want to work here? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do. So I bring out my resume. Long story short, about 4 months later, I was offered an entry-level position at the NBA, WNBA league office. I spent nearly 5 years there working on all sorts of team business operations, that same department that I had researched when I was at the Basketball Hall of Fame, and just really learned so much about the business. How do teams sell tickets? What generates a great sponsorship deal for a WNBA team? And this was all W focused, even though it was the NBA league office. I spent a lot of time in each market. I visited just about every NBA arena across the country, which mostly were also doubling as WNBA arenas. I did a little bit on the development league, the G League, but really spent all of that time just as a sponge, doing any and every job that was asked of me, and sometimes what wasn't asked of me. And I didn't have a ton of rhyme or reason. I couldn't tell you at that time that I was aspiring to be a CEO or I was aspiring to run a WNBA team or franchise, but I knew there was something that kept the motor running for me. There was a greater cause, there was a North Star, and it really hinged on what happened at Canisius, which was, I want women to be on the same level, to be lauded in the same way, to garner the same revenues as the men. And we still have a long way to go, but I think it's a part of being in that growth pattern and being a part of that growth journey that really drives me. I skipped a job. Short stint, but a very important one. I actually, during my time at NYU, I worked at the same time. I was actually an analyst at Golf Digest, and the men's title, Golf Digest, Golf Week, really geared toward the men. They also had a title called Golf for Women, which I got to moonlight on and do a couple special projects on, and that was actually the catalyst that drove me to want to work to do my advanced special project on the WNBA. So I just wanted to throw that little stint in there. I'm not a golfer, if anyone's going to ask later in the Q&A. I never picked up that skill, and I'm still a pretty shabby basketball player. At any rate, at the end of my stint at the NBA, Wnba, I spent a lot of time working across all teams, but I really wanted to focus in on just one team, and an opportunity became available at the Liberty. Believe it or not, I just completed my 11th season with the team. I began as the marketing manager in 2011, and I'd love to take you on a little trip, since all of you have a connection to the real estate industry, on the home team, the home courts that the Liberty have had. So I began my position 5 days before the first game at Prudential Center. MSG was undergoing a huge renovation, and it displaced the women's team for 3 seasons. So we actually played in Newark for those 3 seasons, and I started just before the storm. So my first interaction, my first engagement with a new building, with the people who operate the building, with the permitting structure of running outdoor events and activating in the plaza in Newark, was all brand new to me, but I so appreciated every single moment of that time at Prudential, because it prepared me for our return to Madison Square Garden in 2014. And, there was nothing like being in the world's most famous arena. There was nothing like working with the talented folks who were there at the time. And I just continued to learn and continued to grow. But my focus was very, very much on marketing. And I didn't mention this, but my undergraduate degree is in marketing, and my concentration at NYU was also sports business with a focus on marketing. I thought I was going to be a VP of marketing. I wanted to be a marketing manager, but I'm just old enough to have grown up analog and just young enough to have transitioned to digital very quickly. So I didn't know a lot about social media, and things were changing so quickly. On my first day, there was only Facebook and Twitter. And of course, that landscape changed very, very quickly. But it was in that return to MSG that I started to do a lot more operations. Really a lot of liaising with the building again, security, concessions, planning out with the entire operation of how to run a live event. So as it were, once I became the director of marketing, a new CMO came in and said, well, you're really valuable to the team, but you're not really a classically trained marketer. You're much stronger in operations, and hence the start of my career in leading an operation. And I'm very, very fortunate to have been at the helm for now about 5 seasons with the New York Liberty. And no day feels like work. Every day feels like I'm in a challenge, I'm in a grind. And while it is sports and it is professional sports, I really count my North Star as I'm in the business of elevating women. They're strong women, they're primarily women of color, and they represent something, the best of their sport, the best of what they do. So that's really where I focus most of my attention. I got a really, really cool treat when we moved to the Barclays Center. The move was supposed to happen in 2020, but COVID had another story. That season happened in the bubble. But in 2021, we did have 16 games at Barclays Center, and myself and our general manager actually worked on our first capital CapEx project, where we created a new locker room and compound for the women. And it was one of the coolest projects I've ever worked on, and they let us actually work with a team of female architects, and a lot of the contractors, the project lead, the project manager on the project was a woman. And we built the entire locker room compound with women in mind, which gave it a different flair, which gave us a different edge, but gave us something to be really proud of for years to come. So I'm really, really proud of that project for sure, and looking forward to many more seasons at Barclays Center. I want to definitely allow time if anyone has any questions. Again, no pressure. If no one has questions, I'll keep talking. Lori.
So, Keia, you talked about one of your jobs is to sell tickets.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the hardest things to do. It's, there are only a couple of revenue streams for sports teams. You have your broadcasting agreement, your sponsorships, and your ticket sales. So how do you sell tickets?
Yeah, and selling tickets, for anyone who couldn't hear, how do I sell tickets? And it's one of the few revenue streams in professional sports. It's doubly a challenging revenue stream in the WNBA. we're not a league yet that's selling out, that's having 20,000 people per game. So really, our strategy, and it is a strategy, is very, very hinged on how do we double down on the days that we know we do well, and how do we grow the fan base in aggregate. So while you may not buy a ticket today, you may be watching on television, or you may be buying merchandise. Everybody's seen the orange hoodie with the WNBA logo on it. Kobe Bryant famously wore to a game, and it sort of caught fire. Those are the things where we're moving fans through the funnel, and ultimately we want you to engage and be at a live event, but we understand that this is a larger universe of people that we need to capture. That is one area where I am quote unquote classically trained, because I spent so much time studying what all teams did in terms of ticket sales. So Teambo, or this department, team marketing and business operations, that I've alluded to a few times, is really, really focused on, how many tickets do we sell on a Tuesday versus a Saturday versus a Sunday afternoon. Anecdotally, whenever we play the Seattle Storm, it's always our biggest ticket sales night of the year. Sue Bird plays for the Seattle Storm. Breanna Stewart plays for the Seattle Storm. Sue's from New York. Like, there are these moments in time and these trends and this data that we're constantly tracking, so that we're maximizing and optimizing every single situation we have. But really, it's about growing the greater fan base, and that's really what my focus is right now. And especially when you take a team and you move it to Newark, and then you move them back to the Garden, and then we had a short stint in Westchester County. We played 2 seasons in White Plains, and then we essentially restarted the entire operation under new ownership just 2 years ago. So it's like, how do we utilize the data we've had? Some of it is obsolete, but really just, mass appeal is growing. TV ratings are up across the board. Lots and lots of sponsors are really supporting the WNBA in a different way. So it's my job to really garner and take all of that and smash it together and make sure that we're capitalizing on this moment and this momentum.
Awesome, particularly when you're changing markets. Your fan base is changing as you move locations.
Correct, absolutely changing. And most importantly, we need to get younger with our fan base. That's really a keen focus of ours right now. We have a lot of fans, core fans, our core base. They've been with us for all of the 25 years. So 25 years ago, they may have been, 35 years old or 45 years old or 55 years old, and they're starting to age out now. And if we don't replenish with a younger base, that's really, what our focus is right now. And I think Barclays Center helps us do that. Young players like Sabrina Ionescu helps us do that. And, providing different activation and engagement points is really going to help us move the needle there. Any other questions?
Is there a way for you to set up a not-for-profit portion where people could actually buy blocks of tickets, but then you'd be able to middle schoolers to start building your base up again?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. We have a remarkable program called Libs for Kids, where people can underwrite the cost to send underserved kids to games. Believe it or not, our best 2 and most revenue-generating nights are actually kid-focused. We do 11 o'clock matinees for schools, and then we do another one in July or August for camps. They're typically paid tickets. We've gotten a lot of support from the New York City DOE, from the DYCDs of the city. So because the tickets are very affordable, but the experience is heightened, we've actually dedicated our school day game to have an anti-bullying theme for many, many years. So it became an educational field trip, not just let's go to a basketball game. So, various tactics like that are, really what we're trying to maximize. We're off to a little bit of a slow start. The train's getting out of the station now, but this was absolutely a different season, one like I've never seen before, because we started the year without a vaccine, mandatory masks in the building, mandatory testing we were doing for a long time, which was pretty expensive, but just all sorts of changes, ebbs and flows, from May through September of this year. I'm just thankful we made it. I would count it a success. And the team made the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. So we have movement on both sides.
Tell us a little bit about your Yes contract.
The Yes contract, yeah, that was a fun one for sure. By virtue of being owned by Madison Square Garden previously, and I was a marketing manager, as I mentioned, I'd just show up to games and run the game, and games were popping up on television. I had nothing to do with it. And then fast forward, I was now, the business lead, and new ownership opted out of the MSG deal for obvious reasons, and the Nets are actually carried on Yes. So I actually did negotiate directly the deal for the liberty to be on Yes Network. It was the first time they aired any WNBA games. They are an incredible partner. They are immensely excited about working with our team, with highlighting the women. They show up for us every single home game. They aired away games for the first time this season, but it's just been a remarkable process, and it allows us to highlight partners and sponsors, but really they have a full portfolio view, and we are treated just like the other properties who are aired on their network. So I can't say enough great things about the Yes deal. Sure.
What advice do you have to young women here who are interested in a career in sports? Sports is so sexy, it's so hard to get into, so what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think it would be important to recognize and realize there are so many different industries that you could study, or degrees that you could have, or experience that transfers very nicely to sports. I obviously have a marketing and a sports degree, but I know many people who were history majors and psychology majors and lawyers, a couple pre-med people, and it's just like, this is a place where, and I think this goes for many industries, but especially in sport, it's a place where your passion really drives your commitment. If I didn't get hyped or have an adrenaline rush when a shot is made at the buzzer, but to be a part of that from a business standpoint, I think you bring your whole self to the job. You approach with who you are when you work in the sports industry. So I would definitely encourage folks who have an interest in maybe even transitioning or utilizing the skills that you have to lead with that sort of mindset and passion. I bring what I have to the table, and it's very likely that it would be transferable. Any other questions? Sure.
Can you talk about the importance of mentorship in your career and your
Yeah, I think across all verticals, and especially personally for me, mentorship has meant everything. And I was slow to the game. I'll be completely transparent. I didn't do a lot of internships when I was in undergrad. I kept opting to go home to hang out with my friends for half the summer and stay and play basketball for half the summer. And then I graduated, and now that is like not even an option. It's not something that students can even do, but I was behind the 8 ball for that reason. So that when I did come into the industry, and it wasn't necessarily directly in sport, it was the CFO at the Basketball Hall of Fame that gave me so many nuggets that weren't really about the technical aspect of the job, but more about how you carry yourself in the workplace and how to ask for, how to ask someone to be a sponsor or ask someone to be a mentor or someone who's in your corner. It's meant the world throughout my career. More often than not, the people who have guided me throughout my career have been supervisors, bosses, managers within the industry. And it's only in recent times, and as I've grown and as I've become a C-level executive, where it's like I'm looking to people in other industries. I look forward to events like this all the time where I can meet new people and start, really bounce ideas off of, or look to folks who can help me, not necessarily sometimes with the direct decision-making of the day-to-day decisions that need to be made, but even, just work-life balance. I'm married. I have 2 young children. I love asking moms, how do they balance? As you moved up in your career, and those have been the types of things over the last, 4 or 5 years that have really helped me along the way. Sure. In the WNBA or at the Liberty? Yeah, so definitely sports is a male-dominated industry, But fortunate enough for me, and I think for my colleagues in the WNBA, it skews heavily female. In fact, I actually deliberately and was intentional about hiring a few men on my team because we did have so many women, and I appreciate and I want diversity of thought, and I want diversity of all different measures in the way that I run my business. But more often than not, it's probably, if I had to say, it's probably 70-30 in the WNBA, maybe 65-35, but primarily in this league, you do get a lot of women who are passionate about working for the women. And I'm really proud to say on our team, we have incredible diversity in terms of race as well. And that's really just, I think, a reflection of due diligence and intentionality about seeking people who are the best for the job, but also getting broader about, not just looking for the people who came and applied for the job, but seeking people who may, be at other places and might be right for this particular franchise. I think we're running low on time. If I can just leave you with a couple final words, if there's any morsel that I can impart on you, and I hope it's that, finding your passion and finding what makes you tick is what's really important. But there are a few things I think that are universal to finding your niche. And that's, being willing and open-minded about various positions. I mentioned that job at the Basketball Hall of Fame, and selling tickets is not anything that I ever thought that I would be doing, but I did it, and it opened a door that I never thought would happen. Leaving no room for excuses. Holding myself accountable has helped me 10 times more than a boss holding me accountable, because it's almost like you beat them to the punch. And that's something that, can be attributed to any industry that you work in. And the last thing that I'll mention is it actually coincides with the question that was just asked. It's like people matter. How you treat people, how you treat colleagues, how you treat the people that you work for, that all matters. And it seems super mundane and simplistic to say that, but that's the thing that, people call on you for, or people think of you for positions, or people think of you for promotions, and people start to realize and recognize who you are as a contributor to any organization. But, all of those things are intangible. They have nothing to do with your skill set, but it's more about the mindset. So hopefully you guys got a little bit something out of my story, and I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.